Very good to be back with you today. We have a big show. So we're asking the question, is the U.S. getting ready to invade Venezuela? The Trump administration has bombed over 15 boats in the Caribbean and the Pacific and have killed at least 60 people to this date under the pretext that Venezuela is narco trafficking to the United States. U.S. warships, fighter jets, and military personnel are amassing in large numbers around Venezuela in what many in the mainstream media are questioning as a war that is just hours to days away. Meanwhile, a second Russian transport jet has been spotted landing in Venezuela in less than a week as Nicolas Maduro requests assistance from Russia, China, and other allies. Is yet another war about to detonate under the Trump administration, similar to Iran this past summer? Is Trump's word that a war may not be coming to be trusted? We discuss all of this and more with our very special guests. Right now, we have Scott as we wait for Ray McGovern to come on. We have Scott Ritter. He is a former U.S. Marine intelligence officer, as well as a former UN weapons inspector, journalist, and author. Scott, good to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Of course, yes. And we do have I don't know if he's still getting ready. We do have Ray McGovern, former CIA analyst, co-founder of the Veterans Intelligence Professionals for Sanity. Good to see you, Ray.
My apologies. I don't know what went wrong, but I couldn't get connected. But now I am.
No, it happens. And you look very good, very fresh. Good to see you both. All right. So, yes, let's begin with Venezuela, because there's a lot to get to, from Venezuela to arms control and Ukraine, etc. So let's get to it. Donald Trump just gave an interview for 60 Minutes. Sorry about that. He was asked this question from the interviewer on 60 Minutes about the future of Maduro and about war in Venezuela. Here's the question.
Are Maduro's days as president numbered?
I would say, yeah. I think so, yeah.
And this issue of potential land strikes in Venezuela, is that true?
I don't tell you that. I mean, I'm not saying it's true or untrue, but I wouldn't.
Why would we do it?
I wouldn't be inclined to say that I would do that, but because I don't talk to a reporter about whether.
So that is Donald Trump's answer to that question. But there has been a lot going on in terms of the United States building up toward a potential strike on Venezuela. Here is what sorry about that. Here is what StreamYard is giving me troubles. Here is the Sky News showing satellite images have U.S. military edging closer to Venezuela as Trump's intentions are questioned. We have Marines operating under the U.S. Southern Command, conducting live fire drills about 200 kilometers under the coast of Venezuela. The USS Iwo Jima is where these drills are being led. So my first question to you, maybe Scott, is there a war in Venezuela coming? Yeah, we also have Russian transport jets landing in Venezuela too since October, I believe it was 25th. So what's your take and assessment of what's going on?
First of all, I wouldn't read too much into 2 Russian transport jets. They don't transport much, and 2 isn't enough to tip the scales. I think that Trump, we have to look at it from a domestic political perspective. He'd like Maduro to be gone, and he'd like a scenario in which Maduro fled the country, et cetera. Or the CIA could come up and say, I can take him out today and we can slip in this this opposition government. But then the big question is, then what? And the last thing Trump wants come November is 50,000 American troops bogged down in a guerrilla war in Venezuela, where we have 50, 60 body bags coming home a week with no end in sight. Because that's the future of any effort we run against Venezuela. It's not going to be clean. There isn't a clean opposition. The CIA has very long-standing connections with, I think, 5 families, corrupt families, part of the old, nobility oligarch before Chavez came in. And, these are the people that fund the opposition, run the opposition. But they don't resonate with the majority of the Venezuelan population. And while, yes, the United States has the ability to take out Venezuela's military in terms of big ticket items, those F-16s you see flying around aren't going to be flying around. Any major air defense installations will be taken out. They may take down one or two American aircraft. I doubt it. But then what? Then we have to go in. If we're going in for the oil, understand not a single drop of Venezuelan oil will leave that soil if the Venezuelan people decide to make it so that it can't. Oil extraction is a very expensive proposition that takes place over a long period of time. This is why oil companies spend so much money putting corrupt regimes in power so they can have stability. And removing Maduro, I'm not saying he's corrupt. I'm saying if removing Maduro will create nothing but instability. So I think Trump's been briefed. So he's playing a cute game right now where he is, hinting that something could happen, maybe not, maybe. They're trying to make Maduro flee. But I don't see him pulling the trigger before midterms because Venezuela will not be a fight that America is going to win outright. And it's not going to be a fight that America's going to win at all. We may get a headline at the beginning. We killed Maduro. We captured Maduro. Maduro's gone. And then the next week is, IED went off. 3 Americans dead. A sniper fired. Another American dead. Americans ambushed in some obscure Venezuelan village as we move into the depth to secure the oil fields. American convoy hit. More Americans dead. Helicopter down, surrounded. More helicopters coming in. 3 down. Black Hawk down all over again. Americans dead. Americans dead. Americans dead. And you really think America's going to take that? A war of choice? And then it's going to come out. This was never about narcotics. Maduro is not a drug runner. People need to understand the fact that the United States indicted Maduro in the Southern District of New York means nothing. We can indict a ham sandwich anywhere we want to, and that's what we did with Maduro. He's not a drug runner. This is a manufactured case for political purposes. And I also want to remind all those God-fearing Americans about, due process. You do know that Maduro's innocent until proven guilty, and an indictment is not the proof of guilt. So this concept that we have every right to go around and do what we're doing against Maduro because he's been indicted in an American court is absurd in the extreme. It plays well with Trump loyalists, but it's not going to translate well ultimately for the American people when the body bags start coming home.
Yeah, to you, Ray. What's been your reaction to these developments as there have been escalations as well as contradictory messages from Trump himself?
Yeah, this is really weird, isn't it? All of a sudden, we're turning our attention to Venezuela. Wonder why? Well, I think there's a precedent here. Back in 1983, when I was still on active duty with the agency and Scott was a gleam in his father's eye, I remember quite well that 241 Marines were killed in an easily preventable bombing of their barracks in Beirut, Lebanon. It was awful. They should not have been there. Now, we had a relatively wise president at the time. His name was Reagan. And he talked to some pretty sensible people and said, what the hell are those guys doing there? And there wasn't any reason for them to be there. And the battleships that were shooting World War II shells into the Bekaa Valley, they weren't achieving any good. So Reagan says, let's get them the hell out of there. Okay. And they did. A couple of months later, there was nobody left there. Now, what am I trying to suggest? Oh my God, what a terrible defeat. 241 Marines. We need to Pete Hegseth this. We need to beat our breasts. And there was a Pete Hegseth. He was called the Secretary of Defense. Now it's war, of course. This was very thin veneer, but Cap Weinberger suggested to the president, look, we got to do something to show how strong we are. Where can we go? And he said, hey, there's an island called Grenada in the Caribbean there, and they're threatening, or we could say they're threatening our medical students that they may take them hostage. You know what hostage means? So let's send the 82nd Airborne into Grenada, and we'll show how strong we are. And they did. And they did after the heads of Grenada cried uncle and said, look, we'll do whatever you want. We're going to send them home right away. They just needed to show how tough they were, and they knew they could do it in Grenada. Now, fast forward to September of this year in Beijing. The victory against Japan festivities, to which Trump apparently wasn't even invited. Majority of the world was represented by leaders of the world. The shifts of power, the tectonic shift of power from west to east was never more tangible, never more keenly felt. And Trump, I'm sure, emerged from that and saying, my God, this is awful. What the hell can we do? And with, I hate to use adjectives, with people like Hegseth around, I mean, the only thing to do is find another Grenada. And hey, this grenade has oil in it. So this is the double whammy. That's how I interpret all this stuff. That whole switch, the so-called defense guidance, which now has a switch from China, which used to be our arch enemy, right? Now it's, we're going to do the Western Hemisphere, and we're going to do inside the United States, which is another violation of our Constitution. So bottom line for me is these people don't have any respect for the Constitution. Our Congress, well, it's a bipartisan affair, right? The Democrats didn't care about the Constitution either. Article 1, Section 8 reserves the power to declare war or make war to the people of the United States, represented by the House of Representatives. Now, that's long since gone by the board. Will this change? My God, one can only pray. But so far, Congress has shown no courage on this to exert its prerogative as an equal, actually, as the foremost branch of the three branches of our government. So this is illegal, immoral, and if you have the CIA trying to take out Maduro, well, we already tried to take him out with a drone just a couple of years ago. He was speaking outside, and the drone just missed him a little bit. You know, this is going to go over really well with the world, and it's just, the world, I think, will see it largely as I do. It's pretty pathetic exercise, pretty pathetic reaction to what's really going on with this tilt in power in the world from west to east.
Yeah, and Scott, maybe you could talk a bit about, given what Ray was saying about the broader changes, maybe you could talk about the U.S. buildup around Venezuela in the area. What does it mean? What is the extent of it? How how dangerous is it for Venezuela? And, we have Maduro saying that he is arming ordinary people, getting ready, militias, massive numbers of them, to get ready for any kind of U.S. attack. But what exactly is the U.S. preparing for around Venezuela?
First of all, let me just add something to Ray's, what Ray has said. There's another name in there, Marco Rubio, who's the Secretary of State. He's been wanting to do just this to Venezuela since 2016. Actually, so I think he was first elected in 2012, but in 2016, he became a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and he got the Venezuela South America portfolio. And he's been calling Venezuela an enemy of the United States and looking for a military solution ever since. And he's also dual-hatted as a national security advisor, which means he's the guy that, drafted the, covert presidential finding that allowed the CIA to begin their lethal operations, which are ongoing as we speak. And we can never forget, because the military is just camouflage right now. The real game right now is what the CIA is doing, not just inside Venezuela, but around Venezuela. Recruiting, paramilitary forces using the Afghan model. There will be Omega armies out there. Omega Force was the CIA's secret Afghan army that ran independent of the Afghan government, taking orders only from the CIA. And and that's what they're doing. And sometimes that takes time to develop. They've been doing it for some time now. The CIA started it back in 2016 under 2017 under Donald Trump the first time. James Story was the deputy charged the affairs of the U.S. Embassy in Caracas when it shut down, and then he was transferred to Colombia, where he opened up the U.S. State Department's Venezuela interest section, sort of an embassy in exile, and he oversaw the covert operation to take down Maduro that led to, Juan Guaido. It led to several failed coup attempts. The Biden administration didn't continue this level of intensity, but the CIA always has their resources ready. They have, they've been reconfigured to be a veritable paramilitary organization because of Afghanistan and Iraq, and they've got a very large paramilitary structure ready to superimpose on Venezuela. And the reason why I bring that up is you say, well, what's it mean about the U.S. military going around? Let me also make a statement. Probably going to irritate so many people, but hey, the truth hurts. Yes, we are looking at a world in transition. When was the last time the Chinese put a carrier battle group anywhere outside of their immediate territorial waters? The answer is never. There's only one nation in the world that can put expeditionary forces anywhere in the world at any time, and that's the United States. Yes, we're not perfect. We have a military that's dysfunctional, and who knows how they'll perform in the long term. But there's a difference between people who have accumulated a lot of money and people know how to spend money wisely or well. In the United States, we may not have all the resources of China and Russia, and the world is transitioning. They have BRICS and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and I believe that history is on their side. But as things stand right now, all the people that are dismissive of American military power just simply don't know what they're talking about, because we have the best military in the world. No, we can't fight a ground war in Europe against the Russians because it takes a lot to move our military over there. We don't have the same logistical base, but we do have the capacity to generate hundreds of thousands of troops that can go into Venezuela overnight. And so for people to poo-poo this, no, I don't want a war in Venezuela. God, no. The last thing I want is for us to go to war in Venezuela. But there's some people out there who believe that it can't happen, that this is just a bluff. And sadly, I think it can happen. And I think if Maduro hangs on, because I still think the CIA is going to do everything they can to get rid of this guy. They're going to encourage him to flee the country and do a transition of power that avoids violence. That's the CIA's goal right now. I don't know if that's attainable. But if Maduro still hangs on after November, we're going to war against Venezuela. Maduro is not going to survive the Trump administration. That, unfortunately, I believe is an absolute guarantee. We do regime change. I don't say we do it well. I mean, we change regimes. We're very good at that. We don't, have the outcomes we want, but we will get rid of Maduro. It's a 100% guarantee because that's what we do. Then we destroy countries. We murder hundreds of thousands of people, maybe millions of people. We wreck economies. And, in the end, we don't get what we claimed we wanted to get. But this is the direction we're heading right now. The world is in transition. There's no doubt about that. But the U.S. military is still the dominant military force, especially when it comes to projecting military power around the world. And Venezuela, hey, we got the Monroe Doctrine. We're going to enforce the Monroe Doctrine. And there's no nation in the world that can stop us. Russia can't stop us. I'm just telling you, two IL-76s don't do anything. They'd need 200 flying in a day for months before they could have, deploy the outcome. China, what can China do? Nothing. There's nothing anybody can do to stop the United States when it comes to Venezuela, except the American people. And we're doing nothing. We're asleep at the wheel. Our Congress has abrogated. Ray is 100% correct. Our Congress has punted on this one. And it's a shame because now we have a guy who thinks he's king and he, thinks he can go to war anytime he wants to. And sadly, he can because there's no one in Congress willing to tell him no. And there's no one, even more importantly, around him whispering in his ear saying, this is a bad idea, boss. Don't do this. This is stupid. He has surrounded himself with sycophants who will lick his boot every day of the week, apparently.
Yeah, well, to your point, Scott, I mean, the disaster that the outcomes of what a massive military operation against Venezuela could bring are maybe apparent in the fact that you have in the opposition the Nobel Peace Prize winner, and Ray, you can comment on this, Maria Corina Machado, supporting the bombing of her own country. This is ostensibly who the United States would like to see replace Maduro. Here's what she said.
Do you support US military strikes on the territory of Venezuela as part of what you call a process?
I believe that the increase in pressure and the escalation that's taking place is the only way to force Maduro to understand that it's time to go.
So that's what is coming should the U.S. succeed. But of course, the outcomes could very well be messy, as you said, Scott, and also, as you said, you know, when it comes to China, especially, the priorities are different, the spending is different, the investments are different, and so we have a situation where there is a confrontation coming. Ray, your reaction?
Well, I hate to say this, but she reminded me of Madame Nu. Now that dates me. Maybe there's some around. She was the power behind the throne, the sister-in-law of Nguyen Diem in Vietnam, you know, and she was running things. And the outlook or the impression she created was, you know, she'd really like to run things. I'm not sure. I think this is mostly bluff. I think that there is a parallel with Vietnam. Even the people around Trump, maybe somebody could give them a book to read about Vietnam or something. They don't seem to know much about anything else, but my God, Venezuela, I think, is about twice the size, is it? And those people are going to fight. Now, it's one thing to use Tomahawk missiles and bomb the hell out of cities or airports or whatever. It's another thing to send the Marines in. As Scott has already said, I don't think the Marines are going to go in there before the midterm elections. But, you know, then, well, one other thing. Now, Scott is right, as usual, when he talks about these big transport aircraft, as big as they are, they're not going to change the. But what are they doing there? Well, they're symbolic. I think that Russia and China, as melded together as they are, with the support of most of the rest of the world, will be doing more than just rhetoric. As I understand it, the Venezuelans already have some pretty efficient Chinese offshore or shore-to-ship missiles. I wouldn't rule out them being used. So I think it's mostly bluff. I think nothing much is going to happen, but I've been wrong before, and I'm willing to be wrong again, of course. But you know, when you look at look at the people who have stood up. Why don't we make more of the admiral who was the head of South Command, who quit? Okay, why quit? Well, because what he was being ordered to do was illegal, immoral, and against international law. He happened to be an African American. Okay, another little aside here. There's a ship. It's a guided missile destroyer with all the latest stuff on it, 7 miles offshore of Venezuela in Port-au-Prince, Trinidad, Tobago. The name of that ship is the USS Gravely. Gravely was the first U.S. Navy captain and then the first U.S. Navy admiral who was also African American. Seems to me, I know Sam Gravely because, well, I know him from way back in 1960s when he rented my home in Arlington because I was the only person that would let that was eager to integrate my neighborhood. Okay, Sam Gravely. I think he's spinning around in his grave now. I don't think he wants his name on any ship that's going to follow the example of what am I thinking? That Marine Corps general who Smedley Butler, two medals of honor, right? And what did he say after he was all done? Yeah, I'm an enforcer for the mob here. I'm an enforcer for the imperialists that wanted me to overthrow governments in Latin America. What I'm saying here is that even the Navy has maybe 20, 30% Puerto Ricans, blacks. Maybe, just maybe, this admiral will come out and say why he quit. Maybe he's just a little shy about it, but he should be encouraged because this is the time when you quit, okay? And I see some hope that there will be somebody like, well, Oscar Romero, who will say, cease the repression, cease the oppression. You're not going to fight against people poor like you just because they have a different color skin or because they live in a part where you can exert your will according to what you're ordered to do.
Yeah, good points, Gray. Well, Scott, I did want to ask, given, I know you made a comment earlier really briefly about this, but I do want to ask you, given that you are a weapons inspector, you study Russian, the Russian military, the U.S. military, what they have at their arsenal. You said that maybe not much has been coming to Venezuela, but I wanted to ask your reaction to the fact that there were these two military transport aircraft that made their way to Venezuela, very long journeys, given the aircraft that the airspace that they had to maneuver around. But two in the last week or so, and so I wanted to ask you what could be on these and why are they significant or not, based on your interpretations and your assessment?
Well, again, I don't believe they're significant at all. Militarily, there's nothing on there that we can't destroy. They're IL-76s. If you know anything, the big lifting's done by the AN-240. IL-76s can carry, a couple Pansirs, the mobile short-range air defense system. They're coming out of Africa, so maybe they're drawing on stocks that Russia had, supplied there when Wagner was operating. Now it's the Africa Corps, so maybe they're drawing on some stocks. Maybe there's some advisors coming in. Sustainability is everything. I mean, you can bring in good people, but how do you sustain them? Once this war starts, there won't be any airplanes landing in Venezuela. That's a guarantee. There'll be carrier battle groups off the coast of Venezuela preventing all that from happening. So this isn't a lifeline. This isn't the Berlin airlift, with constant stream of aircraft. These are, maybe politically, but the Russian government has already said there's nothing we can do for Venezuela. That's it. There's literally nothing they can do for Venezuela. Russia's not going to get involved in a shooting war with the United States and Venezuela with that logistical. Russia can't sustain that fight. Russia's strength is interior lines of communication. The fact that the war in Ukraine right now, Russia, literally is coming from their defense industry right to their border region, and they don't have to go long distances. There's no significant. I think people are just reading into it too much. I don't know what's on those aircraft. Again, the defense industry and Wagner. So maybe they're deploying some advisors. But again, it's a suicide mission. You send advisors, and then what? Where's your quick reaction force when our guys come in to hunt them down? And we will. That's just it. So I don't want to read too much into this. Venezuela is in a very, very bad position, and there's not a weapons. I mean, if I were the Venezuelans, I would launch a surprise attack against the United States today with everything I had. I would fly all my aircraft out and try and blow up as many F-35s on the runways. I would saturate a carrier battle group with all the anti-shipping missiles I had, and I would seek to sink a ship and do damage, because this is your only shot. Once the war starts, we're in control. We do it better than they do it. We have electronic warfare. We have better missiles. We have better everything. So, the only thing we aren't going to do well is, a continued ground presence on Venezuelan soil, especially moving into the interior where the jungles are. Then guerrilla warfare comes in, and we're not going to win that one. We're going to lose that one. And ultimately, we'll lose the war in Venezuela. Whatever government we put in isn't going to be sustainable. But that doesn't help in the short term, because right now we have idiots who believe they can do this. And God bless that admiral for resigning, but he's literally not going to he's not going to say anything, because unfortunately, to speak out against the president of the United States, he is subject to recall to active duty, and then he can be held accountable for his words. There is no free speech in the military, and you don't lose your obligations under the UCMJ when you retire as a general officer. And so encouraging people to speak out. I mean, yes, I'd love to see people with the courage to do that. But with this administration, with this FBI, this Department of Justice, this Department of Defense, you're not going to find too many people willing to sacrifice their retirement, their future, the security for their families. I'm not holding my breath for the next generation of Smedley Butlers.
My last question to you on Venezuela before moving on is why now? So Ray, that's my question to you. Why now? Because as you said earlier, this has been an ongoing agenda especially for the United States, regime change. It hasn't, there was a time during the Bush administration, Jr., where there was a CIA coup, wardened off, took away Hugo Chavez, didn't succeed. Now it seems like the escalations are becoming up to that level again, if not worse. So why now, Ray? Why is this going on?
Well, my speculation, as I tried to elucidate before, was that we need some kind of a demonstration that we're still the most powerful country in the world. Remember when Biden was asked by the 60 Minutes guy, do you think it can handle maybe 2 wars at the same time? And he said, we're the United States of America, the most powerful country in the world, and the most powerful country in the history of the world. Well, that ain't so. And for the short term, you may have Marco Rubio's running around and old Dick Tracy Hexeth, running the Department of War. But as Scott said, where is this going to go? Is it going to go into the jungles here, like in Vietnam? I inevitably will if they follow through. So my prediction, for what it's worth, is that they'll tomahawk the hell out of Venezuela. They'll try to hit Maduro, not with a tomahawk, but with something else, with the CIA. But I'm not sure they can succeed. The other thing I'd say is this. The Russians have been unbelievably patient, that is Putin, with the shenanigans done by this administration. Unbelievably. I can hardly believe it. So the U.S. strikes out. It strikes out and bombs the hell out of Iran. And what does the Kremlin say? Well, okay, that's a different area. That's subordinate to our overriding desire to create a more decent relationship with the United States. The Russians want that. The question is whether Trump wants that. I think he wants that, but he's really circumscribed by these crazies around him. So what if the Russians say, look, Donald, if you go ahead and invade Venezuela, forget about any decent relationship with us. We're going to oppose you at every turn, and we're going to clean up Ukraine, whether you like it or not, and embarrass the hell out of you for being on the wrong side of this one. We can do that. We can do that by the end of the year. Watch us. Now, would that have any deterrent effect on Trump? It might on Trump, but you get Lindsey Graham and Pete Hegseth and Marco Rubio and the rest of them. They probably will win the day. So I suspect that we'll have a lot of shelling and a lot of tomahawks sent to Venezuela. I'm not so sure that anyone will have the stupidity to send the Marines in.
Yeah. And Scott, to maybe your final comment on this, before we move on, I definitely want to ask you about the arms control situation. But when I hear, massive numbers of militias being formed in Venezuela, it seems like, to your point, they're preparing for a long, almost like protracted guerrilla war, which you said will not end well for the United States. Why does it end up going in that direction? Why now? Why now? As I asked Ray.
Marco Rubio. What do you mean, why now? He's Secretary of State, and he's National Security Advisor. Rolled into one. It was inevitable. The second Rubio became Secretary of State, it was known that we were going to go after Venezuela, because this has been his love project since 2016. So, this was bound to happen. Trump put the wrong guy in as Secretary of State. Had we had a different Secretary of State, we'd have different priorities. But Marco Rubio, this is what's he thinks is going to get him the presidency of the United States. This is what's going to make his name. So this was inevitable. This is why now, because Rubio's the Secretary of State. He's the National Security Advisor, rolled into one. He gets to do all the decision making. There are no checks and balances on this man at all. He gets to whisper in the president's ear 24/7 as the National Security Advisor. He gets to bypass all other secretaries. Hegseth wants an audience. Maybe Hegseth wants to come in and say, hey, maybe we shouldn't be doing this. But Rubio's there as National Security Advisor. And then when the principal meeting's held and Hegseth's there, Rubio's Secretary of State gets to put in a counter argument, but he's already polluted Trump's brain. This is a tragedy waiting to happen. And Ray, I hope Marines don't land. But unfortunately, I think we have some really stupid people who are fully capable of doing stupid things. And this is an administration that has yet to experience body bags and the political consequences of body bags. And it's going to be worse for this administration because they promised peace. They told their base that this was the administration of peace. Turns out this has the potential to be one of the most warmongering administrations we've ever had, ever. If Trump now, because it's not just Venezuela. This guy wants to go and kill Nigerians.
Yeah,
he wants to be involved in defending Christianity in Nigeria. This is a man responsible for the genocide in Gaza. Literally, he already bombed Iran. And now what? He's we're claiming we're washing our hands of the war in Ukraine, but we provide weaponry directly, indirectly, that results in Ukrainian men being slaughtered every single day by the thousands. This is a man who's literally drenched in the blood of people around the world, and we haven't formally gone to war. Wait till we get Venezuela. Colombia is not going to sit aside. So when you get in Venezuela, it's a 2-for-1. You get 2 for 1. You get to get Colombia, and the other thing people need to understand is, Southern Command has been one of these commands that nobody's paid attention to. That's just been there. If you think that means we've been doing nothing, you don't know anything about Southern Command. Delta Force has been wandering those woods. DEA has a veritable army, paramilitary army, doing counter drug stuff. And I'm talking tens of thousands. The special forces have been down there doing training and all this stuff. Our conventional guys go in and do work with the helicopters and all. We have been active in South America and Central America for decades, and very active. And these people, they become singularly focused. They get the blinders on. And so the people giving advice, they'll bring in the DEA guys going, oh, we got this. We got good relations with the locals. We can go in and we can do stuff. And the CIA's tagging on with them and building up their little local army. And Delta's in there saying, we can do a snatch anytime you want. We're really good at this stuff. And the SEALs are just waiting to be able to go across some beach somewhere to kill somebody with a knife. this we're not getting the right people talking to the president. The people who are saying that all these things these people have done, Mr. President, you need to know they haven't worked. The war on drugs, we lost. We're losing. All the things we've done, we kill people, but it never succeeds in solving the problem. The military solution has never succeeded. What about Panama, Scott? Well, gosh, great success there. And I just want to say, you talk about these militias. Panama had a citizens militia too. And I forget the name of the suburb in Panama City where we burned it down and killed thousands of them. The Venezuelan militia in a stand-up fight against the U.S. military stands no chance. We will slaughter them. Now, we get into a guerrilla warfare situation, that's different. But the idea that you're going to have 10,000 militia members out there massed to take it, it's just a target. And we have standoff weapons that will kill them all. I'm not encouraging it. I don't want it. I'm just stating the fact. We have a president now who's literally murdering people in boats off the coast of Venezuela that we don't know what those boats are doing. And it doesn't matter what those boats are doing. It's murder. It's a war crime. And the men carrying this out are war criminals. And the men giving the orders are war criminals. You don't get the defense, I'm just obeying orders. This is clear cut. Rules of engagement. These people aren't presenting arms. We're not in a state of war. You have no right to bomb this boat. None whatsoever. Zero. And the second you do that, you have committed murder. You want these people to make the right decision, to make the moral argument? They're already war criminals. What more do we expect from these people?
And Ray, hold on one second. Okay, go ahead.
Danny, I wanted to say that I'm beginning to feel a little sorry, not only for the Marines, but for Donald Trump having Marco Rubio whispering in his ear all day. Must be pretty terrible punishment here. All kidding aside, we've reached quite a pass where the U.S. president can say, well, no, I don't think Maduro is very long for this world. And the journalist who's asking him these questions, oh, that's interesting. Oh, well, it's become regularized that we do these things. And I think that maybe the independent media will have some impact here. At least we've grown from what we used to be. And maybe the American people and the people that have supported Trump will say, well, now, wait a second, as Scott mentioned, you promised us peace. You're going to have another war here with body bags and stuff. I don't know. It's going to be a really good thing to watch for the next several weeks. And I just hope that this is mostly bluff and that after Hegseth and the others have beat their chest for a while, nothing more serious than the invasion and capture of the island of Grenada will eventuate.
Yeah. I mean, I've been saying for a while now, when it comes to everything the United States does, it's like the political consequences you talked about earlier, Scott. It's like it really just takes one strike that causes a major public relations nightmare, ship sunk, fighter jet down, that creates a huge political nightmare for a Trump administration that said, hey, look at this laundry list of arguably questionable peace deals that we made. I mean,
but look what we've done though, Danny. I mean, we have American troops in American cities. The American people aren't doing a damn thing. We have ICE, jackbooted thugs in masks, no badges, hunting people down like dogs. And all the MAGA people going, this is what I voted for. This is what I voted for. And so Trump has conditioned them to this nonsense. I mean, and so the same people that are screaming about ICE and, we need to get rid of these immigrants, and they're going to fall victim to the, Maduro is, trafficking fentanyl, and, we have to take them out. And I don't think, I think Trump, whether this was done on purpose or by accident, has done the best possible job of preconditioning the American people for this. And if it fails, what's the next thing he's done? given an order to the Secretary of War to have the National Guard ready to send emergency reaction forces into every American city starting January 2026. And where is Congress? Where's the American people? Where's the National Guard? Where the people said and go, no, that's just not going to happen. No, Mr. President, we're not going to do that. Congress, no, over our dead body, literally, Mr. President. The Supreme Court, no, that ain't going to happen, Mr. President. Everybody's silent. The American people are cheering it on. That's the saddest part. We have thugs in the street hunting down people, and the American people are cheering them on. I know there's a handful of people out there going, no, we shouldn't do that. Huh? MAGA, the guys that put this madman in office, that's what I voted for. American soldiers in the street, this is what I voted for. No, nobody voted to run roughshod over the Constitution. And if you think it's a good idea to have American soldiers in the streets of an American city that hasn't been invaded, then you don't understand anything about the Constitution. And after all, we are a constitutional republic. So if you don't understand anything about the Constitution, you're not much of an American now, are you? In fact is, if you're the kind of people out there saying this is what you want, you're about the most anti-American. But I have no use for these people who are willing to throw the Constitution aside so they can sit at home, drink their beer, get fat, and watch, people get hunted down like it's some sort of entertainment.
Well, speaking of SOB, speaking of the Supremes, I guess in 2 days they're going to make some big decisions about tariffs. That's going to be big. I have some modicum of hope that they'll make the right decision on tariffs. They may even require Trump to give back the extra money that we have earned from tariffs. I think that would give him a little punch in the nose. And the Supremes, are not something that he usually expects to go against him. So maybe this is a forlorn hope, but the Supremes are the third branch of our government. At least that's what I learned. And let's see what they do on Wednesday. I think it's Wednesday they make that decision, and whether that will prompt Trump to pull his horns a little bit, because he's knee deep in it. I mean, the government is shut down. He's lost in Asia. He's losing Ukraine. He's embarrassed by what he is enabling himself in Gaza. I mean, is there no end to how deep, how much he's going to dig that hole more before he tries to get out? I don't know, but everything's in flux. That's maybe the main message. And again, we'll have to see what these. When does the USS Gerald Ford come on station on Venezuela? It should be just a couple of days. Is that right, Scott? Do you know?
Yeah, a couple of days. But again, they're not. I mean, I'm not worried about the Gerald Ford showing up on station.
They can fly. They can fly. Well, yeah. Okay.
Can I just make a quick observation? I
Sure.
made a mistake. There's a song that Joan Baez and Bob Dylan sing, Deportees. And it's about, I think it's Los Gatos Canyon. There was a C-46 that crashed, I don't know, like 1946, 47, right after World War II, with a bunch of deportees. We've been deporting people for a long time. This didn't just happen. And any of you son of a bitches go to the grocery store and pick up fresh vegetables, guess who picked them most likely? Illegal aliens. Any of the roofing jobs you have, oh, Scott, these are 100% American crews. Not really. America runs on illegals, have been running on illegals for decades. It's what we want. It's what we did. It's what our economy does. And now to sit here and make this political, as the president has done, this is pure entertainment. This is a snuff film. That's all it is. It isn't correcting the problem, because the problem can't be corrected, and the president isn't correcting it because he's giving waivers to everybody. This is pure entertainment, and if you're out there defending what the president's done, you're dumber than poop. I'm just going to say that. I'm sick of these people. This is what I voted for. You don't know what you voted for. I'm just fed up with these people, Danny. They're stupid. They're armchair citizens, and they're not citizens. You didn't vote for this, and you're ignorant. If you don't know the relationship between the United States economy and illegal aliens, then you're stupid. This country exists on the back of the work done by illegal aliens for the last 50 to 60 years. It's what we've been designed to do. It's been slavery in anything, in any other name, and yet we ignore it. Those little brown people who make up your bed in the hotels, the little brown people that do everything in America that we just turn a blind eye to. You stupid idiots. I'm disgusted with them, Danny. I'm sorry. I know they're your audience, but
look, I mean, I share the sentiment, undocumented people who are not legally citizens, the amount of exploitation that goes on is absolutely incredible. And it's exactly right. The US economy, for what it's worth, given that it's not working for the vast majority of people right now, they are doing the hardest of work for the least. Not to mention the dangers of what we're seeing now on video everywhere.
Because I'm going to turn them off after this. The U.S. Constitution doesn't protect you. Read the freaking Constitution. The Constitution protects everybody in the United States, whether they're an American citizen, whether they're not an American citizen. They have due process. Oh, God, you stupid idiots.
Yeah, let me just add, from a human point of view, I mean, I was my grandparents were aliens. I don't believe that any human being can be illegal. I think that we come out of a faith tradition, many of us, that gives preferential treatment to aliens, to widows, refugees, orphans. At least that's what we pretend to believe. So one problem I have is with the institutional church, which knows this and pretends to follow it, but does not preach the word. And there can be self-aggrandizing Christians who believe they're doing exactly the right thing to kick these illegal aliens in the teeth and drive them out of the country. It's a failure of our moral leaders, and that the result of that is a challenge to the rest of us, because there is only us. I mean, there never has been any other. And when people say to you, oh, there aren't enough of us, well, that's what they told Cesar Chavez when he said, let's do a grape boycott. I remember it distinctly. That's the advantage of being old. Yeah, he said, let's do this. And they said, no, Cesar, it's crazy. There aren't enough of us. He says, there are enough of us, but nothing's going to happen without action. Okay? So nothing's going to happen without action. And it's up to us, and we can't look for moral leadership in any other place but right here with Scott, you, Danny, me, and the people who are listening, who have the guts to stand up for what we say we believe, and that is treat the poor people with preference, not only with equality, but with preference, because they deserve it. At least that's my faith tradition.
Well, it's what Jesus taught us. If you call yourself a Christian, I'm just telling you right now, I turned off the comments, so I don't care anymore.
It's dangerous, Scott. It's dangerous to go in the because the people they say things for this.
Exactly. Well, they literally tried to get me riled up, and they succeeded. But we got this moral majority in America. We're a Christian nation. We got this Judeo-Christian ethic and this foundation. If you go to church and you were baptized and you call yourself a Christian and you're cheering what ICE is doing, you ain't a Christian. Not at all. Because I can guarantee you this, Jesus wouldn't allow this to happen. That's not what Jesus would do.
Yeah, I mean,
last word, and then we'll move on. Last word. Oh, sorry, yeah. I don't mean to interrupt, but please.
Just one more thing here. You don't have to be Christian. You have to be human. Now, one of my favorite quotes from Kurt Vonnegut, humanist, atheist, agnostic. he's asked, Kurt, what do you think of Jesus of Nazareth? And he says, oh, well, you know, I don't know if he was God's son or not, but if it weren't for the Sermon on the Mount, I think I'd just as soon be a cockroach. Think about that, okay? Now, we have the Constitution. That's great. We also have the Sermon on the Mount, which is a real challenge. The ideal for me is to blend the two and give preference to those who need the most help, like my folks were given preference to 1 century ago.
Well, I mean, this was great because it needs to be said, and I'm glad that you both are saying this. Now, I wanted to begin with you, Scott, on this. You know, Donald Trump and his administration have said that they've resumed nuclear tests. I know that you've been following the New START treaty. I believe the last remaining nuclear treaty between the U.S. and Russia is due to expire in February 2026. As this has been developing, we've had Russia test a number of weapons, 2 in particular that the BBC is very worried about here. The nuclear-powered, nuclear-capable underwater, I believe it's Poseidon, it says underwater drone. I don't know if it's submarine drone, what's the difference, but you can help out with that. And then, of course, the Burevestnik nuclear-powered cruise missile, which made a lot of headlines given its nuclear-powered reactor, its unlimited range, et cetera, et cetera. Talk about this, Scott, in the context of the Trump administration saying that it's restarting nuclear weapons tests because other countries are doing it. Talk about the significance of these weapons that Russia has unveiled, why it has at this time. What's your assessment?
First of all, we're not restarting nuclear weapons tests, so just stop that nonsense. Trump's tweet shows the ignorance of the man. He directed the Secretary of War to carry out these tests. Sorry, Secretary of War, not your bailiwick. It's not your portfolio. We have other agencies that do that, affiliated with the Department of Energy and overseeing our nuclear weapons. The Secretary of Defense or War has nothing to do with that. You know, we do subcritical tests. We've been doing subcritical tests for some time. So has Russia. So has China. These means that whatever we do, we don't get fission. So it's not a nuclear test. It complies with the test ban treaty, and we're going to continue to comply with the test ban treaty. What happened is that the president was informed that Russia did 2 nuclear tests, you know, the Burevestnik and the Poseidon. They both were tests of a nuclear propulsion system. The Burevestnik, as the Russians apparently have done that which we could not do. It's been taking a long time. 1957, I think, is when the initiating instruction was given to Russian Soviet defense industry to produce a nuclear-powered cruise missile. We started our own project around that time. We built a couple. They're dirty as hell. We fly them out and they just spew radiation. We said, my God, we can't do this. And so we stopped. The Russians, they actually continued this. You know, they have some very good nuclear research centers in Russia that in the United States we don't have the equivalent of. Yes, we have Sandia, we have Los Alamos, we have what the hell's the one in California?
Berkeley.
No, Lawrence Livermore.
Yeah.
And you know, we got other, but you know, the Russians have you know, the one near Moscow that does mainly commercial work now. But they have another one. I think it was what was that name? Secret City, Arzamov or Armazov or Razumov or something like, you know, 116 or whatever. The bottom line is they converted an old seminary into a nuclear research center for their weapons program. And these guys have worked with the civilian guys, and they've produced apparently a clean nuclear reactor, small. And it basically generates heat, and then this heat will superheat air and do what a scramjet does. You know, you superheat air, and then the expansion of the air propels the thing forever, because you're not running out of fuel. You got a nuclear engine that's replicating what the fuel's supposed to do in a turbofan and all this kind of stuff. The Russians did it. They succeeded, and they tested it. That same concept of a nuclear propulsion applies with the Poseidon Drone is unpiloted vehicle. That's what a drone is. Basically, it's a vehicle with no pilot. So it's going off either based upon pre-programmed information or receiving communications from outside sources. These were the nuclear tests that the Russians did. And the president, because he's literally dumber than dirt, was told the Russians have done nuclear tests. So he said, well, we got to do our own nuclear tests. And so what we're getting right now is a Minuteman being put into the test silo, I believe, at Vandenberg, and we're going to do a launch. So we can say we tested our nuclear. Well, hell, we just did another test of the Trident D5s. The president's too stupid to realize we've been doing nuclear tests forever. We just did life extension tests on the D5, popped off a number of them. So it's not like we've done, but now he has to declare it because he feels intimidated by the fact that Putin has now declared these two things. What's the significance of this? Look, Ray was kind enough to publish something the other day about a conversation that Vladimir Putin had with journalists, Western journalists in 2016, where he basically said, you guys are too stupid to live. Do you not understand what's happening? When you got rid of the ABM treaty, which, again, Ray dating himself, I'll do it for him, 1972, Ray was there in Moscow when it was signed. That's something. Foundational treaty because it recognized the fact that nuclear wars can never be won, therefore they should never be fought, therefore we shouldn't even bother trying to build defenses against nuclear weapons because it's just stupid. People will build better offensive weapons. And yet the United States withdrew from the ABM treaty, and then we began to deploy systems, the GBI system in Greeley Air Force Base and Ground Base Intercept in Greeley Air Force Base. Interesting movie just came out on Netflix. Can't remember the name of it right now, but it doesn't work, and it won't work. Every one of those missiles is handmade because the one before it had a problem, so they had to fix it. They're not in serial production. And then we started taking Aegis ashore. The Mark 41 system used to launch missiles, either Tomahawk missiles or SM-3, SM-6 anti-ballistic missiles or anti-air missiles. We put them ashore, one in Poland, one in Romania. And the Russians went, that's a little close to home. Then we started deploying Aegis ships around the Russian periphery designed to shoot down missiles. And we put in this missile defense thing, and the Russians went, that's not good, because even if it probably won't work, but if it does, it creates the perception that the United States could launch a preemptive strike against Russia, attempting to kill as many Russian missiles as possible, and leaving the Russians to say, if we launch, or the United States is going to shoot down most of them, we won't get the damage we want. Then we get a second and third strike from the United States that'll wipe us out. So the idea is to dominate the nuclear deterrence profile so that the Russians are in an inferior position and therefore not likely to start a fight. And Putin said, but that's not how we operate. So in 2016, he said, we're going to start things. I can't tell you about them right now, but we're starting things. In 2018, he unveiled them. The Sarmat missile, heavily ICBM, which travels around the South Pole, not the North Pole. We have no early warning defense capability at all. Comes in, they could hit us. We'll never even know what happened. The Avant-Garde maneuvering hypersonic missile, it actually works, unlike anything we produce, which doesn't work. The Avant-Garde works. Gosh, he did. He talked about the Boresnik, nuclear power cruise missile. People poo-pooed it because right after he advertised it, they had an accident in the north. 5 nuclear scientists died. That's, by the way, how we know so much about the propulsion system, because the Russians, in surprising fashion, actually identified who these scientists were and what part of the defense atomic agencies they worked for. And anybody with a brain on their shoulders reads their bios and reads their PhD dissertations and understands the research they're involved in. You go, oh, you just explained a lot about what's going on with Burevestnik. And then, of course, Poseidon, same thing. He declared it. It's there. That was 2018. Here we are today. Sarmat's deployed. Avant-Garde's deployed. Burevestnik and the Poseidon have just finished their final test. Now the Russians are seeking to figure out how they're going to incorporate them to their doctrine. How do we control this? Well, New START was the treaty. And the Russians have always said, we didn't know how we're going to classify these weapons, how we're going to account for them. Because once you start building one category of weapons, if you have the cap of 1,550 deployed nuclear warheads, you got to remove weapons from someplace else. There always has to be this balance. But now what's happening is if the treaty goes away, there is no cap. So the Russians can keep current capabilities and expand these capabilities and deploy them. And what's the United States supposed to do? We can't even build the Sentinel missile. We got a Minuteman III missile today, which is decades old. The guys operating are younger, sometimes twice as young as the missile they're supposed to fire. We can't replace it. We said it was going to cost, I forget, $145 billion. When that account came out, I said, we're looking at a $2-3 trillion system that will never work. And everybody went, oh, Scott, you don't know what you're talking about. I know exactly what I'm talking about, because now Congress has stopped funding it because the price went above the Nunn-McCarty cap, whatever Congress got tired of the defense industry underbidding projects, then beginning the projects, and then demanding they continue to fund it. F-35 come to mind. And so they passed a law that says when you get a spike, you have to stop the program. And the Sentinel spiked twice in a row, and they don't have a solution. And so the Sentinel's done. Now they're going to extend the Minuteman III to 50 years. It's going to be, 2050 now is when it's supposed to go. We can't even do that. We don't have the defense industry to do that. We can't do anything. And the Russians are out there doing everything. Scott, you love Russia. I like Russia. I don't love Russia. I love America. And I don't like it that we have this president who gets told that we have the biggest, baddest, most wonderful weapons, and we can't produce anything. Oreshnik. People think it's a bluff. It ain't a bluff, ladies and gentlemen. It's as real as it gets, and we can't stop it. And it's in serial production, and we don't get it. The last treaty is expiring. It's not going to be restarted. It's done. On February 5th, we will have no more arms control. Now, Vladimir Putin has said he'll extend the moratorium for 1 year to buy time to get the United States to wake up and get engaged. But who's going to engage? The people that do arms control are highly skilled specialists. Ray was one. I was one. We're not there anymore. You don't grow these people like grass. It takes time. The people that negotiate ABM treaty, we're negotiating that for years. And then they went on to do SALT 1, SALT 2, then INF, then START 1, START 2, START 3, SORT, New START extension. And today they're all retired. We haven't trained new people to do it. The diplomacy muscles have atrophied. We don't know how to do this. And the people that were doing it just got fired. July 11th of last year, 1,300 State Department specialists, the Russian specialists, the arms control specialists, gone. Who the hell is going to do this? Who's going to negotiate this treaty? Where are the experts out there? We are outclassed by the Russians, both in terms of actual systems. We're outclassed diplomatically. We're outclassed in terms of consistency. Say what you want about Vladimir Putin. I'm not going to sit here and sing his praises. My God, he's been in power for 25 years. Yeah, I think he has a good grip on what Russian policy is and what Russian capabilities are. And we keep throwing new presidents in every 4 years. Lately we can't extend the presidency. Trump lost, then Biden lost. Now Trump's only in for 4 more years. That's a seesaw effect. Who's going to replace Trump? We don't know. No guarantees. But the point is, the policy does this. And when you have policy that shifts, that means your funding gets screwed up. You spend too much money on too little results. Meanwhile, the Russians are there after 25 years. They fine-tuned the system. Everything's working like a champ. Oreshnik was directed in 2021, became operational in 2024. Find the American equivalent of a high-tech system that gets directed to be built in 2021 and 3 years later is ready to go to work. We can't do it, guys. We simply can't do it. It takes 20 years, 30 years for us to do this stuff nowadays, and we still can't do it because it's too damn expensive.
Let me add something, Danny, if I may.
Yes, please.
I'm glad that Scott referred to that very bizarre meeting where a bunch of Western journalists were in St. Petersburg for an economic summit. And he asked them to come for a small meeting, maybe 14 people around the table. And he said to them, starting out, look, I know you people, we're both mature adults. I know that you're going to not write up what I tell you. I know that you're not even going to tell your editors and your publishers what I tell you. But let's talk man to man. I'm going to tell you what's going on. You guys with your ABM, we're not sure it will ever work, but we're not waiting. We're developing offensive missiles. Here's a quote. The absolute linchpin for strategic stability was the ABM Treaty of 1972. And when George W. Bush got out of it, that was a, quote, colossal blow to the system of international security. I said then that we're not going to waste a lot of money on ABMs that might not be effective. Rather, we'll continue to develop new generation weapons to defeat the ABM system. So offensive missiles. Now, some things I cannot tell you right now publicly. It would be improper. That was 2016. Well, they developed nicely so that by 2018, as Scott has alluded to, in Putin's State of the Union address, he did a show and tell, 6 of these new systems. And Scott has already told you about what's come online. The big question is, how much of this Trump has been briefed on? My God, it seemed like a revelation coming from heaven that not only the Reshnik, but the what is the Buravyesnik and the Poseidon, he reacted so quickly. We're going to do the same thing, or in other words, the main problem seems to me equally the lack of specialists, but equally the people who are too dumb to tell our president, look, we need to come to terms with these people. They're doing their best. Last thing I'll say on this. The New START treaty runs out 5 February. No hope to amend it or improve it or anything. It's over. Putin has on the table September 22nd an offer to do a moratorium, to keep the quantitative limits, which I think, Scott, correct me if I'm right, they're 1550 for each side on offensive missiles. Keep that in place for a whole year so we can figure out what to do and not run amok with being released from any constraints. Now, Ryabkov, the deputy foreign minister, said just last week, look, this is not an unlimited offer. I mean, it's going to run out. February 5 is coming. What's your response? Now, this is what I want to drive home. The way the Trump administration responds to this eminently sensible request for keeping these quantitative limits on is what will determine Putin and his coterie of specialists, their view on how serious the U.S. is or how much latitude Trump has to do anything meaningful with respect to relations with Russia. If they do it, then there's hope. If they don't do it, well, Ukraine goes down like this, and the Russian hopes that there can be a more decent relationship with the U.S. goes down with it, in my view.
Yeah. Good points, Ray. Scott, I want to ask you one last thing before closing perhaps on the battlefield. I wanted to ask you, why is it, given everything that you said about the weapons that Russia has been able to roll out, its military industrial complex, all of this advancing at such a breakneck pace, why is it then you have Europe? Why is it, they seem to continuously, almost in league with the continuation of the conflict, and of course, the absolutely disastrous relations now between Russia and Europe. But as these weapons get rolled out, as Russia becomes more and more able to defend itself and, to stave off the threats like the Ukraine conflict was, you have the Belgium's foreign minister or defense minister, sorry about that, saying that NATO would flatten Moscow should a Russian missile strike on Brussels occur. What do you make of this rhetoric? What is happening to Europe where it is essentially even speaking more aggressively in many ways than the United States toward Russia?
Look, Europe is a bunch of caged chihuahuas. They are incapable of doing anything. They're not even cute. It's an insult to chihuahuas. I mean, it's These are useless people, useless human beings. I gotta be careful what I say here because I don't like this guy. He doesn't know that of which he speaks. I mean, it'd be one thing if this guy was a military hero. This guy could do 5 push-ups. This guy could do anything. Look at his background. Look at his resume. Look who he is, and you'll know what I'm talking about. This is a guy that after he made this statement, because of the press blowback, had a nervous breakdown. He can't even flatten his own newspaper. These are people who are programmed to say the dumbest things at the dumbest time. This is like Cashapp out there, Russia needs to be broken up into tiny little states. That's the only way we're going to have peace. A little Baltic woman thinking she can break Russia up. It's like Mark Rutte, a failed Dutch prime minister, suddenly, growing a pair. No. These people don't know these aren't the real deal. This isn't somebody who's been there, done that, got the t-shirt, understands the consequences of their words. These are fakes. These are fronts. These are, superficiality personified, coming up there saying things on cue because they're living off of a script actually written by the British, if you want to know. This is a script designed to keep Ukraine in the fight. Keep the European Union relevant, keep NATO funded. NATO can do nothing. They can flatten nothing. NATO is only relevant with the United States, and the United States doesn't want to do anything. I want to remind you, while he's speaking about flattening Russia, the United States made the decision to withdraw from the Romanian theater of operations, where we have the 101st Airborne Maintaining Brigade. We just sent elements of the 3rd Infantry Division in there. We're going to drop that number. It was 1,600. We're going to take it down to under 1,000. We're starting the process of withdrawing from Europe, not reinforcing Europe. So while Europe is speaking about building up this imaginary army, they'll never be able to fund or equip or do anything with. And who's going to fight? In Germany, if Germany was invaded, this is according to a German poll, if Germany was invaded, only 16% of German men said we'd fight for Germany. That means Germany has no men. Because if you're not willing to fight for your country, you ain't a man, especially if your country's been invaded. And yet the Germans are like, no, we don't want to die for our country. That's how about if somebody invades Germany. Now what happens if Germany starts going off invading other countries? You think the Germans are suddenly going to change? Oh, wait, if we're invading another country, I'm ready to go to war. Germany, who wants to build the biggest military in Europe to become the European powerhouse, can't even motivate enough fake men to sign up to defend their own country. And they're the strongest nation in Europe. Europe is a frickin' joke when it comes to the military. They got nothing. And they're only there because America is backing them up. But we're not going to back them up forever. We're getting the hell out of Europe because we don't want any of this. Trump just washed his hands of the war. I don't know if people listen to what he said. Sometimes you got to let them fight it out. That means we're done. Right. Are you going to give them tomahawks? Probably not. No, you're not. You know the consequences. Putin putting you on notice what the consequences are. We're out of here. The Ukrainians are going to get slaughtered. And this propaganda exercise that's propping everything up, making people think that Ukraine's in the fight, is, suddenly when they're all dead, you realize how stupid people were to believe any of this.
Yeah, the European leaders are really a bunch of political hacks that rode through the system and now don't know what to do. I mean, it's very embarrassing. How are they going to change their policy? Are they going to say, "Oh, we spent X billion euros and pounds and all, and sorry, but we lost in Ukraine. And besides, we're really sorry about all the social benefits we had to cut back. But so we just made a big mistake." They're incapable of doing that. They're incapable of recognizing that sooner or later they're going to have to do that. Now, I want to inject one note of hope here. That Belgian defense person and Kaya Kallas, and they're out of this world, or out of their own gourd. But one person who happens to be the prime minister of Belgium told it like it is with respect to the other Europeans trying to seize Russian assets and use it to fund the war in Ukraine. He got up and made a masterful speech and said, "Look, you guys tell us that we Belgians, even though most of those assets are in our banks, that we don't have to worry about it. We have no liability. Well, forget about it. We're worried about it, and you ain't going to do that. Okay. I learned later that Bloomberg, a week before, had said the U.S. will discourage Belgium from letting this happen. So why do I mention this? I mention this because if there's no more money, okay, then the Europeans are just going to have to figure out what to say for the next few months until the inevitable defeat of the Ukrainians in Ukraine happens. So, if there's no, this is the construct that we have all been trying to persuade to believe, right? Number one, U.S. has all these sophisticated weapons, okay? It's just that they're in production, and they're not, well, they may not be a match to the Russians, but anyhow, we're going to get them a couple of years maybe, and then we're going to sell them to the Europeans, and the Europeans don't have any money to buy them, but maybe they can make some loans, maybe they can buy them, and then we'll give them to the Ukrainians who don't have any army left. Outside of that, this is a great plan, isn't it? I mean, it's crazy on its face. It's just that the American people, unless they watch Danny Dhaiphong, Scott, and myself, they don't have a prayer of understanding this. Just as they're led to believe that a human being can be illegal.
Yeah, and perhaps we could close off on a bit of a war report, Scott, beginning with you. Can you provide an update on what's happening on the battlefield right now in Ukraine? We have a bad situation for Ukraine in Pokrovsk, where now they're turning to what they're calling special forces to try to hold the city, as even The Guardian is reporting that Russian troops are moving in a pincer-like manner, as they call it, with hundreds, if not thousands, of Russian troops breaking down the lines. So what's going on, Scott? What is the latest in the conflict, and how is it shaping this overall atmosphere, whether it's the U.S.'s involvement, the way Europe is going about this? Your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I have to say I'm right now in the United States, but even when I travel to Russia, I'm in Moscow. I'm not on the front lines. So it's, you're a victim of the data that you receive. Ray is one of the guys who, has been consistent in saying the best way to learn about a leader or about a nation is to listen to them over time. And there are patterns that develop, patterns of behavior, how leaders speak to people. Do they lie? When they lie? How do they lie? And I've been applying that to Vladimir Putin. And I'm not going to say here and say he's perfect, but Vladimir Putin, when he speaks to the Russian people, is honest. That's my experience. He doesn't straight out lie to them. Is he capable of, softening a message or, softening a blow or overemphasizing a point? Sure. All politicians do that. But he doesn't straight out lie to the Russian people. And so when Vladimir Putin, and understand also that when Gerasimov, the chief of staff of the armed forces, commander in chief of the Russian armed forces, military commander in chief, when he makes a presentation to the president, that presentation has likely been drafted and a copy sent to presidential administration, reviewed. The president gets pre-briefed on these points. So nothing's going to take him by surprise. So when Putin rolled in to have this meeting with Gerasimov, and Gerasimov gave him the reports about Kupiansk being effectively surrounded and Pokrovsk being effectively surrounded, 31 battalions of Ukrainian troops being effectively surrounded and now subject to elimination. Putin echoed this and supported this and embraced this. These are big statements that can be made, and frankly speaking, they could be relatively refuted if they weren't true. So I tend to believe the Russians, because over the course of this conflict, the Russians have been far more honest and open than the Ukrainians, who have been, propagandized from the very beginning. The Ukrainians are fighting very hard. There's no doubt about that. But their war goes through a information warfare filter run by the British and the United States. Kupiansk is surrounded. The Ukrainians right now are desperately trying to break in and break out, and they're being slaughtered by the Russians. Pokrovsk is effectively surrounded. The Russians are clearing out the pocket. The Ukrainians were forced to do this propaganda exercise where two, I believed, UH-60 aircraft were flown in at very low level, and they disgorged, 11 or so special forces operators who were going to clear some villages and clear the way and make it possible for the counterattack to succeed. The insert was monitored by Russian drones, who then documented how they killed every single one of these people. And yet the Western headlines, they show this because this is what the British do. The British planned this operation to be this major imagery-based thing. Helicopters penetrating the Russian lines. Russians have no air defense, apparently. These brave special forces guys, oh, geez, Budanov, the leader, he's there at the front directing it. And they show a photograph of him bravely marching forward, directing the troops. It turns out, however, that photograph was taken 100 kilometers away in the city of Pavlograd because people looked at the building, noticed certain identifiable features, and matched it to the actual place where the photograph was taken. It's all fake. I mean, everything's fake except the dead Ukrainians. And that's what's happening here. But the most important thing that most people don't pick up on is that up and down the line, there's at least 50 similar encirclements taking place of a smaller nature, because this is how the battlefield has evolved. With the Russians, with the Ukrainians picking a point where they stand, they say, this is where we fight. And for all the people to move forward inch by inch by inch, you do know that since 2014, the Ukrainians have turned that area in Donetsk into the single most fortified piece of land on the planet. I mean, they have dug in, all this stuff. There's no army in the world without the use of nuclear weapons that could do what the Russians are doing right now. All right? Ask the Israelis when they go up against Hezbollah's defenses in southern Lebanon. When they get up in the hills and the Hezbollah boys come out and knock them in the nose, that's the fight that's going on. And the Israeli army, the vaunted Israeli army, gets stopped at hill number 1. All right? The Russians have actually fought through these towns. And the Ukrainians dig into the towns. They put human hostages in the basement, making it impossible for the Russians to actually drop the building. So the Russians have to come in and then evacuate the humans and then assault through. Look at the Battle of Mariupol and what really happened there with the Azov bastards that slaughtered civilians. This is what the Russians are doing, and they're winning. But now the Russians are getting to the point where they've achieved dominance across the battlefield. The Ukrainians are still there in large numbers fighting, but the Russians get them to commit to a strong point. Then the Russians do a pincer around it. And the Ukrainians have the choice to withdraw to the next fortified position they prepared in the rear, and then the Russians push forward, or they hold and they die. This is why the Ukrainians are losing 2,500 to 3,000 men a day. 2,500 to 3,000 men a day. That's real numbers, guys. And we in the West just pretend it's not happening. Or we do what the British told people to do. Flip it. Take the Ukrainian numbers and say, that's what we're doing to the Russians. But it ain't happening. I can tell. And I know when people are uncomfortable. I've done it a long time. And when I look the Russians in the eyes, I see honest men speaking back. First of all, their answers are very honest because I get direct answers from people about losses, about the difficulty of the fight, about logistical difficulties. The Russians aren't saying this is easy. Every Russian I've talked to says it's the hardest thing in the world. Those Ukrainian SOBs are putting up a hell of a fight. But we're winning. We're beating them. And I believe them. I look at the Ukrainians. They're just liars, straight up liars. This is a propaganda exercise, unparalleled. And history will show it to be such. It will show it to be such. It's a tragedy what's going on right now. But, Donald Trump has basically said, we're going to let them fight it out. Europe is going to continue to provide as much financial and material support as possible. And the end result is the Russians will kill every Ukrainian necessary for this war to end. And that is a tragedy because this means that hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians are going to die because Donald Trump doesn't have the courage to tell Europe to back off and tell the Ukrainians it's over.
Right. Please step in.
Yeah. Well, 8 days ago, Sunday, week ago, Putin appears in fatigues, and he's briefed by Gerasimov and the general staff. And the first thing he says is, look, we've got these cauldrons where we have Ukrainian troops surrounded, 5,000 here, 5,500 here. We don't want to kill them. I know some of you guys want to kill them, but we want to offer them POW status. And so here's my offer. We're willing to encourage them to do that. And we want to let journalists, Western journalists, as well as other in there, if the Ukrainians will permit that, for just 5, 6, 7 hours, just to see that this is real, this is a cauldron, and we don't want to kill these people. What happened? Well, the Ukrainians, of course, said no. Well, why did Putin do that? Well, number one, it was a terrific political propaganda, if you will, move. But number two, it's a human thing. These guys don't need to be killed. They could be used profitably in the Ukrainian economy if they're not killed, okay? It makes good sense not to kill people if you don't have to. That was number one. Now, number two, he says, oh, by the way, brief me on this Budoviesnik. Tell me about this. And then Gerasimov and the others say, well, not, this is all scripted, of course. Putin said, now, how far that thing fly? Oh, 14,000 kilometers, Commander-in-Chief. Oh, well, and how long did it stay up there? Hours and hours, okay? So this was all staged. Now, why staged? Well, so that those Russians are saying, look, you're not going fast enough, Mr. Putin. And I think they're all Russians saying that, okay? You're not going fast enough. We're going to win this damn thing. And Putin is saying, look, we got it taken care of here. We're surrounded all these troops. We're hoping not to have to kill them, but if we have to, we will. And besides, we have these magical weapons. So what's the bottom line here? Well, the bottom line is that Scott is right. This guy tells the truth. And he's the most perspicacious. He's the most adroit politician that I have ever observed, that I've been around for a while, okay? What can I say that I don't like about Putin? Well, I found something. The photo of him welcoming Jolani, the head chopper from Syria. Oh my God, says McGovern. You really have to do that, for God's sake? Oh, he's in the White House today. I guess, oh, well, I guess politics is politics. You have to extend your hand to the new ruler of Syria. But outside of that, in my view, we're damn lucky to have Vladimir Putin in charge of Russia. And we should realize that and, be adroit to be acceptable to his terms, because in the final analysis, and this is the big backdrop, he's won the war and he's willing to do, I think, make concessions that would enable Trump to be able to claim that this was a negotiated end, that Trump got something for Europe out of this. I think that's possible if Trump has any sense at all. The fly in the ointment, let's face it, is Trump, not Putin.
Yeah, and Scott, I've never been to Russia. I know you've been many times. I've had people on the show who have been many times, and they say, almost both, right? That the Russians both think, there are some that believe that it's going too slow, and that there are others who understand exactly what Ray said. What is your assessment, though, of the approach now, given that Russia has this such overwhelming advantage? What prevents Russia from just cleaning this up and saying it's over, if anything?
Clean it up and it's over. What prevents it? Reality. First of all, I just take umbrage at anybody. We don't need to go over it again, but Gilbert Doctorow is out there pretending that there are people in Russia today who are dissatisfied with Vladimir Putin and that they're really, really important people and that Vladimir Putin better watch out because these people may actually do something. And then because Gilbert Doctorow may be taking money from MI6, his message is immediately parroted by the Telegraph that says Putin's afraid of a coup being planned in London by Mikhail Khodorkovsky. He's out there working with the businessmen in exile to do this, that, and the other thing. It's all crap. Okay, I've been to Russia. I'm telling you right now, the people that didn't like Putin left when the war started. Hundreds of thousands of them. They fled. And you know what the people in Russia said about these people? Good riddance. And you know what most of these people are doing right now? They want to go back because they realize that Russia's winning. And Russia wasn't as bad as they thought it was. They came to the West and said, holy cow, this is worse than we thought it would be. But there's a handful of people out there. These are like, trying to get grassroots reality about Iran by talking to the Iranian, diaspora in Los Angeles that fled the Shah in 1979. All right. They don't know anything about what's going on inside Iran. And Gilbert Doctorow doesn't know the damnedest thing about what's going inside in Russia today. What I do know is this: Vladimir Putin won the last election overwhelmingly during a wartime when Russia wasn't winning as convincingly as they're winning now. And the Russian people sent the signal, we trust you to finish the job. No time frame. The Russian people didn't say, you got to have it done by November. Got to have it done by this. Russian people said, you got this, boss. Finish the job. And what Putin has said all along is we will finish the job on our terms, and there's no clock attached to it. We will get this done. We are a results-based operation, not a calendar-driven operation. Unfortunately for we in the West, we're all calendar-driven. Trump puts artificial timelines out there. Everybody puts artificial timelines out there. And the Russians just say, no, we don't accept that. We're going to get this done. And the Russian people support this president. Now, are there people that would support even harsher actions? Sure. They're out there. They're in the minority. The majority of Russians trust the president to do the right thing, which means you don't overextend your military. Let's remember that the Ukrainians are in their fifth mobilization, sixth mobilization. I mean, I don't know. They have hundreds of thousands of men in uniform. They're losing, a couple thousand a day, but they still have a lot, and they're out there thumping heads and dragging them off. The Russians have done one mobilization, 300,000 in the fall of 2022. Since then, their military operates on a volunteer basis only. They're deployed military in the special military operation, sign a contract like we do. They call them contract soldiers. We call them volunteers. But what does everybody who joins the military today do? They sign a contract with the military. It's the same concept. And so they're able to recruit people in a time of war to do the fighting. And how many troops does Russia have deployed in the area? A little under 800,000. So basically, it's a one-to-one operation with the Russians and the Ukrainians on the front line. If you study warfare, you know that you need to carry out effective offensive operations 3-1. And if you're carrying out offensive operations against a heavily fortified position, 5-1. And you're going to lose a lot of guys. Well, the Russians aren't losing a lot of guys comparatively. They're assaulting the most heavily fortified positions known in the world, and they're beating the enemy at a 1-to-1 ratio. So because the kill ratio is 12-1, 15-1 in some cases, some people say 36 to 39-1. I mean, that's what the dead body exchange rate is. I think that might be a little high, but the bottom line is normally when you're going to lose 3-1, meaning 3 Russians to 1 Ukrainian in an assault, here we have the Russians attacking the most heavily defended space in the world, and their kill ratio is 12-1, 15-1, 20-1. Why? Because they're winning. Because they're doing it their way. They're doing it with their algorithm. And this is a war of attrition. The job is to kill as many Ukrainians as possible, and they've done it. The Ukrainians are running out of manpower. Russia's not running out of manpower. The Ukrainians have to bring in weapons that NATO no longer has. Russia has actually drained NATO's arsenal. But the Germans just gave the Ukrainians 2 or 3 more Patriot batteries. They'll be dead by the month. Okay, that's how it works, guys. This war is over. When's it going to be over, Scott? You said 3 weeks. First of all, I didn't say 3 weeks. I said about a month. But that turned out to be wrong because I thought Russia was going to war. See, Russia's not at war. That's the other thing people don't get. This is a special military operation. If this was war, Russia would mobilize. Oh, and the biggest gift we gave Russia was compelling them to mobilize when they didn't want to, and suddenly finding out that about 60% of their mobilization facilities were run by corrupt individuals who hadn't stocked it properly. And what did the Russians do? They fixed everything. So today, if NATO, remember NATO wanted to go to war with Russia? Today, if Russia said, okay, we'll mobilize, they can get 5 million guys up in arms in a month and a half, fully equipped, fully armed, organized into divisions, corps, now with operational doctrine that reflects military reality. And they will roll over NATO like a hot knife through butter. You know, what will NATO do? They can't. I told you, the Germans are too busy, pissing their pants and eating, donuts and schnitzel and pretzels. They don't want to fight. The Russians don't want to fight either. But the Russians now is more prepared for war than they have ever been, thanks to what the West has done here. Russia isn't just beating Ukraine. Russia is beating the collective West. Russia's outproducing NATO countries defense industry-wise 4-1. Russia's just a gas station with nuclear weapons. That's a pretty damn good gas station. They got a hell of a shop mart because they got everything you could want and more. But the other thing I would say for the people, what about the sanctions? What about this, that, and the other thing? If Russia is a gas station, then they're the best damn gas station in the world because that's what they do. Ask the Saudis every time they tried to have a little energy security crisis with the Russians and they went up with them, we're going to squeeze them out of the markets. What happened to the Saudis? They surrendered because Russia does this better. Russia produces oil cheaper than anybody else in the world. When we pump oil out of the ground here, the best we can get in Texas, what, $36 a barrel cost out of the ground? When oil's at $30 or $60 a barrel, you make $24 profit. Not enough. Russia pulls it out of the ground at $11, $12 a barrel. And when oil's at 60, that means they're making a profit of over $40 a barrel. That's more profit than we make. So they don't have to sell as much oil to make as much profit as we do. And now, because of what we've done with the sanctioning, oil prices are going up, which means Russians have to sell fewer barrels to make the same amount of money. The people who encourage sanctioning of Russian energy are the dumbest people in the world. You don't want to take on the biggest gas station in the world when you're driving a Humvee out of gas on a highway in the middle of nowhere. And that's where the West is right now.
Yeah, Ray, I'll give you the final word here. Anything you want to add, plus anything in the bigger picture, given what we discussed today?
Yeah. Well, even though I'm a real old guy, I've learned a lot from people who are still older, just a year or two older. And one of them was Steve Cohen, Sovietologist, magnificent. Another is Jack Matlock, 10 years older than me, but still very much alive. Now, with respect to Steve Cohen, when I was going back to Russia after not having been there since 72, that's 1972, not 1872, all right? He said, look, Ray, there's a guy that's going to go to the same conference as you, and his name is Gil Doctorow. And I want you to meet him because he's among the best there is. PhD out of Columbia. He's worked in business in Russia for 30 years. You want to meet him and you want to learn from him just as if you've learned from me. Wow. Well, we did get to know each other quite well at that conference, and I've kept in touch with him ever since. My attitude is that people go out of the box sometimes farther than they really intend to. But, thinking out of the box is a good idea. And what I'm suggesting here is that what Gil has been saying is that Putin is feeling a lot of pressure of people saying, my God, get this damn thing over with. You have all the means, do it. Okay. Now, is there any evidence of that? Well, Gil cites these very important and influential people on talk shows. But also, what's the logic of the thing? 8 days ago, I mentioned, Putin felt necessary to choreograph his in-fatigues appearance at this command post to be to be reassured that the Ukrainians have been encircled, 10,500 of them, and that we have this Burevestnik that just won't quit. I mean, that was theater. Now, was that because he felt it necessary at this point in time to reassure people in Moscow that, he's working on it, and that, as he said specifically, he's putting the saving of Russian soldiers' lives as the primary purpose here and going slow? Well, I don't know, but in my view, it's an acceptable premise that, yeah, of course he feels pressure that he's not going and maybe that accounts for things like Burevestnik and the Poseidon, both of which, within days, he advertised very publicly, maybe to allay people, say, look, for God's sake, don't bother me. Look what we got here. So I just wanted to say that, in my view, you let 100 flowers bloom. All kinds of stuff can happen, and we've all been wrong before about at least I've been very wrong before about very important things. But I think that people like Gil instill the kind of out of the box thinking that is salutary. And so I welcome that. And in terms of his qualifications, well, he's got unique qualifications in terms of language and culture and where he's been for most of his life now, which has been working in Russia or in Europe, working on Russian accounts for major corporations.
Mm. Okay.
I'll just say right now, Ray, I respect you dearly. Gilbert Doctorow, I don't give him the benefit of the doubt because he explained his thought process. You're an analyst, Ray. You know this. And when you say my thought process isn't based upon all this experience that I have and all this, but Judge Napolitano's podcast being translated into Russian, and I read the comments, and I immediately eliminate all the comments in Russian that are misspelled because those are ignorant people. They're not high-class society. And then I embrace the comments of only the people who are well-spoken, and I disregard all the comments that are sympathetic to Putin. And so I only evaluate a narrow slice of that. And from that, I assess that there is this widespread thing of which there is no evidence thereof. You know this as a CIA guy. You can't go to your boss and put forward a premise that has no evidence. You can't say, just accept it, boss, 1,000,000 flowers blooming. No, there has to be evidence-based stuff. And moreover, when Gilbert Doctorow's information is being used by hostile intelligence agency to prime the pump to continue a war, there are bodies attached to this stupidity. That's my problem. This isn't about free speech, free ideas. Gil Doctorow is killing Ukrainians, and he won't accept that. Take responsibility, Gil. Your stupidity is killing Ukrainians. And until you acknowledge that, I got no use for the guy. I respect you, Ray, so much. And I know you think highly of Gil. And look, I used to too. The guy speaks Russian better than I do. He knows he's not current on Russia. His sources are dated, and he, I believe, has fallen into bad company, because if I reverse engineer a lot of what he does, it ends up smelling a lot like London. And that's not good when it comes to Russia. And I'm pretty good at reverse engineering this stuff, Ray. I'm pretty damn good at it. And when Gil Doctorow starts smelling like London, I start calling foul.
Well, I guess friends have to disagree on things. Yeah. The notion that Gil is doing anything other than painstaking work on coming to conclusions that he thinks are correct. I give 100% to Gil on that. He may be wrong, as I say. Well, I've been wrong, but the notion that there's no, I don't think maybe you're saying this, Scott, but well, maybe are you saying that there are no important Russians that would like to see this thing over with and really kind of pressuring Putin to do more? I mean, do you deny that this orchestrated thing out there eight days ago was in part to allay suspicions that he's going to? In other words, do you dismiss that?
I totally dismiss it. First of all, there's no politically relevant people saying anything. Is there a chattering class in Russia? Absolutely. Absolutely, there's a chattering class. They go on podcasts. They're out there. None of them are politically relevant. Not a single one of them.
Scott Ryabkov, deputy foreign minister, spoke out and said, this is really terrible, and this shows that the agreements reached in Alaska are over. Alaska is over. He was reprimanded the next day by Ushakov and then by Peskov. I mean, it would be strange if there weren't, but there
Did I just tell you politically relevant? Do you understand the political relevance of Ryabkov's statement internally inside the Kremlin? Zero. There's nothing there. There's nobody able to challenge Putin at a meaningful level on the policies that we're discussing here. You know that, and I know that. There is no opposition in Russia. I hunted down this thing. I mean, I've been schooled. You know, the Russians aren't looking for Jeffersonian democracy. They're not looking for a viable opposition. They don't want a viable opposition. And Vladimir Putin doesn't respond to this kind of pressure. You know that. This isn't the first time Vladimir Putin's worn a uniform. You know that. This isn't the first time he's staged, military displays of this nature. You know that. This is what Russia does. Is Russia going through an interesting time? Yeah. Is this a staged event to send a message? Sure. But the message was being sent to the West, not to the Russian people. The Russian people don't need theater. The Russian people are behind this guy 100%. And that's just the way Russia works nowadays. There's just no politically viable opposition in Russia capable of standing up to a man who has received the vote of the Russian people. There's no one that can sit. Why would you dare put your head out there politically right now to take on Vladimir Putin?
You could make a mistake. Ryabkov made a mistake. He's the deputy.
Got ahead of himself.
Yeah, and what was he? He was rebuked, right, immediately because this is not really possible. Because
no. He got rebuked because he got ahead of the game, because the Russians then caught up with him. Ryabkov was in a meeting where the strategy was laid out, and he went out and spoke too soon. And he got slapped down, and now the messaging has caught up. The Russians are saying exactly what Ryabkov said, because it's the truth. But at the time he said it, the Russians weren't, they play policy games like we play policy games. Ryabkov's mistake was that he got ahead of the script, that he went out there and spoke before he was authorized to speak. Not that he was telling a lie, because the Russians have said, listen to what Ryabkov said. That's exactly what's coming out of the Kremlin today. Those words. But there's a time and place. Ryabkov got ahead of the game because the Kremlin is waiting for Trump. The Russians want good relations with the United States. They don't want to close doors. And Ryabkov was closing doors before the Kremlins were ready to have that door closed. They had things. They had Kirill Dmitriev going to the United States. Why the hell do you dispatch him to the United States if Ryabkov's saying there's no reason to go to the United States? They need to do their little political, get this thing done, get this thing done, get this thing done. And that's all that happened there. Ryabkov's not part of the opposition. He's on the team.
Of course he's on
He's Team Putin.
Well, Dmitriev is pursuing one thing on this fork, and the others are, I guess maybe we've beat that horse to death.
No, that's great. No, I think it's a really good conversation. Personally, I have not actually listened to anything Gilbert Doctorow has said. And I know both you are familiar. My own personal take on this, I think I agree with a little bit of both of you in the sense that the facts are right there. It's obvious that not only do Russians support Putin, but that the entire government is organized right now in a special military operation situation to follow a very particular path, which I think is working. And then, of course, I wouldn't doubt, even though I can't cite any evidence of this, I wouldn't doubt that there are people who might disagree. But how I see it, like whether it's Russia or China, countries that are in a very particular situation, even when there are disagreements, there's an understanding. of how you go about things and how you pursue a particular policy. And they don't do it like what happens in the collective West, which is everyone says whatever they want. And if it makes everything go to shit, who cares? It'll work. It's kind of what happens in the West right now. And I think it's just a different context. So, but I really appreciate both of your perspectives.
Let me just throw in one last thing though here. To show you, the concept, is Putin right 100%? No. When the sanctions came in, after the special military operation began, Putin and his advisors gathered around, and they thought they were going to take a 22% hit. And some people were saying, well, why didn't you mobilize earlier? Remember that 300,000 mobilization that took place in September? Because there were many people saying that needed to happen sooner. When you recognized that the Ukrainians, because the initial operation was to get Ukraine to the negotiating table. They did, Istanbul Communique. But when Ukraine backed away and the United States poured in the $48 billion and Europe started flooding in equipment, there were people saying, we need to mobilize now. And what Putin said is, we can't. Because we don't know. To mobilize, we got to do things with our defense industry. And to do that with our defense industry, we could create the kind of crisis that the West wants. We have to be very balanced here. We have to make sure we have our ducks aligned. And so they were thinking a 22% constriction of their economy. Instead, when the numbers came in, they were wrong. The economy actually shrank 4%. And now they have excess capacity that wasn't planned, that he said, mobilize and begin doing the defense conversion to get things up to speed. But it's an experiment, because now you're moving forward and you have people saying, hey, boss, what's going to happen? Are we going to overheat the economy? How do you know how much oil India is going to buy? That's the other thing that Russia always has to play into account. How are other nations going to respond? Because you can't oversell your capabilities if you can't fund them. And you can't fund them unless the nations are willing to do business with you. And if you go in and you kill every Ukrainian walking on the face of the earth, nations may not do business with you. So the whole thing is a balancing act that's being played there, where Vladimir Putin has to consider everything. Internal domestic politics. How does this affect Novosibirsk? What happens if the Novosibirsk economy gets too hot? Who becomes too powerful in Novosibirsk? Do we want to raise new oligarchs, or do we keep it contained so that we don't create a new oligarch class? This is all being done with managed. Putin is traveling all the time, meeting with people. I read the minutes of these meetings that he has. He is managing this thing. And so to sit there and say that Putin has a master plan that they're operating off isn't how it works. The Russians are doing something that's never been done before, which is to take on the entire world in a wartime, inventing, rebuilding relationships, trying to figure out economic problems. To do this, how does the United States have 1.6 growth and Russia has 4.4% growth?
Yeah, exactly.
It isn't America that's been sanctioned, it's the Russians, but their economy is growing more than twice the amount of the American economy. How? And how, yes, they have some inflation, but it's not hyperinflation. It's not out of control inflation. It's inflation that you get when you have an overheated economy. And what Putin is doing is making sure it doesn't get totally overheated. And so they play with interest rates. They do the same thing we do. And you have to monitor things. You have to make adjustments. And when you make the adjustment, it doesn't mean that you've been put under pressure by somebody. It means that you're realistic, that you understand your country better than anybody else understands their country. And that's what we need to respect. Is that Vladimir Putin's been doing this job for 25 years. He knows Russia better than anybody. And he's involved in a very difficult situation where he has to manage a complexity of problems that extend far beyond the battlefield. So for all the people saying, you got to go, 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 you don't know anything about Russia, because everything you do on the battlefield resonates backwards, all the way back to relationships between other nations, BRICS, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, everything. And so he has to do a balancing act. In order to do that, you have to keep things on an even keel. And that's what he's doing. It's masterful. One day, if the West ever gets over its Russophobia, somebody will write a book about this. And this Vladimir Putin will go down in history as a leader that has accomplished something that no other leader possibly could under these circumstances. He will go down as one of the greatest leaders in Russian history because of what he's doing today. And the greatest leader in Russian history doesn't come under pressure from an imagined Russian societal elite.
Well, Scott,
Ray, you have a final word? Yes. Sir.
I would agree with you on how he will go down in history. But I just say that part of leadership has to do with knowing where the pressures are, how to push back, how to allay this kind of concern. And I see him as very adroit. And as I said before, we're lucky to have him. And maybe you'll live long enough to write that book, Scott, because I may be out of here by then.
Yeah, Ray, come on, we'll write it together.
Well, this was a great conversation, gentlemen. I want to make sure everybody knows that in the video description, you can find Ray's X account, where you can find his posts, his work. You can also find Scott's Substack as well as his YouTube channel. So you can definitely follow both of them, support their work. You can also find all the places to support this channel, Patreon, Substack, and much more. I'll be back in a couple of days, November 5th, with friends of ours, Colonel Larry Wilkerson, and Larry Johnson. Without further ado, everyone hit that like button before you go. That helps keep the stream going so more people hear Scott and Ray. I want to thank all the moderators, all the super chats. I really appreciate all of you. Constructive Economics, Sparky, and Lee, I believe that is. I appreciate all of you for that support. Everyone who watched today. Scott, Ray, anything that I forgot?
No, I'm heading off to Russia this week. Spent 19 days trying to stop a nuclear war. So if anybody wants to support that effort, feel free to go to my Substack, and there's a donate button. And I can guarantee you that whatever you donate will be used wisely and hopefully effectively. I can't guarantee outcomes, but you will never get an outcome unless you try. And so I'm going to go to Russia. What's that old Teddy Roosevelt, the man in the ring? And that'll be me standing in the ring. I may be scarred. I may be bloodied. And the other guy may get his hand lifted over his head, but I'm going to be putting up the biggest fight I can possibly put up to try and get an outcome that is beneficial, not just for the United States and Russia, but for the world.
Well, Scott, as I hope you know, I gave at the office. And
I know.
I wish you all the best. And Счастливого пути. Do your job. I admire your work. And thanks, Danny, for hosting us here.
We'll head off together. All right, everybody. Thanks so much. You heard both of them. Take care. Do all that good support stuff. And I'll see you in a couple of days.